Elena Walker's New Year's Eve was supposed to be uneventful until a night of impulsive decisions turned her world upside down. One evening, three men, a whirlwind of passion, regret, and longing. By January, Elena discovers she's pregnant, but with the truth buried under layers of guilt, she's left grappling with one burning question. Who is the father? Caught between her flirtatious neighbor, a former flame, and Damien, the man who's captured her heart, Elena must navigate the chaos of her emotions and her choices. When Damien unexpectedly returns to her life, offering a chance at love and redemption, she's forced to confront her past and share the truth about that fateful night. Will love be enough to overcome betrayal, doubt, and the weight of her secret? As the new year unfolds, Elena embarks on a journey of forgiveness, hope, and a chance to rewrite her story. New Year Eve romance is a tale of passion and the lengths we go to find true happiness. The story New Year Eve Romance Chapter 1. New beginnings. The city buzzed with a soft hum of anticipation as the new year approached. Everywhere, lights sparkled like stars, and the air carried an electric charge. Amid the festive chaos, Elena Walker stood in her modest apartment, scrolling through her phone with idle fingers. A small smile tugged at her lips as she read a message from Damien, a charming man she'd met at a work conference in another city 2 months ago. Damien, I'll try to visit you soon, promise. Life's just been a whirlwind. Elena, I understand. Happy New Year in advance if I don't hear from you again, as you always ghost me sometimes. Her chest fluttered as she reread his words. Damien had become a beacon of excitement in her otherwise routine life. Their conversations were magnetic, filled with humor and warmth. Yet life seemed to conspire against the meeting in person. Every plan to see each other was met with last-minute obstacles, but tonight, none of that mattered. For now, she focused on the present. She had no extravagant plans for New Year's Eve, just a quiet evening to herself, until her neighbor, Chris, knocked on her door. Hey, Elena. Chris greeted with his signature boyish grin. I'm having a little pre-party gathering. Just a few people, some drinks. You should come. Chris was charming in his own way, a notorious flirt who never missed an opportunity to compliment her. Though she'd rebuffed him countless times, he was persistent. Thanks, Chris. I'll think about it, she replied, her voice polite but non-committal. She didn't plan to go, but as the hours ticked by, her solitude began to weigh on her. She remembered her ovulation tracker app's notification earlier that day, a detail she usually dismissed. But tonight, she felt it, a restless yearning that pulsed through her veins, heightened by her emotions and the champagne she'd poured herself. Finally, she caved. It's just drinks, she told herself, slipping into a casual outfit before heading next door. Chris's apartment was warm and lively. A handful of guests chatted and laughed, but as the night wore on, they left one by one, leaving Elena and Chris alone. They sat on his couch, a romantic movie playing in the background. Chris leaned closer, his hand brushing hers. You know, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, he said, his voice low and teasing. Elena rolled her eyes but felt a spark of something undeniable. The champagne, her hormonal restlessness, and his proximity stirred a dangerous cocktail. His hand moved to her thigh, and she didn't stop him. One thing led to another. Their lips collided, hungry and eager. Clothes were discarded in haste, but when the moment came, Chris's enthusiasm fizzled out almost as quickly as it began. Before Elena could even process the situation, it was over. Chris didn't even last up to 2 minutes. Seriously, she muttered under her breath as he slumped onto another couch, already drifting off to sleep. Frustration burned in her chest. So all this flirtatious gestures just for 2 minutes. Chris is already breathing heavily in sleep? She sighs. She dressed hurriedly and left, her mind racing. Her body still ached for fulfillment. The 2 minutes performance of Chris made her ignited everything in her body. She hunger for more and she felt a pang of regret as she checked the time. 10:22 p.m. I need air, she muttered, grabbing a coat and heading to the club down the street. The music was loud, the energy infectious. She moved through the crowd until she spotted a familiar face, Jordan. an ex-flame. They'd dated briefly, but ended things amicably. He grinned when he saw her. Elena. Long time no see. They talked, reminisced, and the chemistry between them reignited. When he asked her to dance, she didn't hesitate. One dance turned into two, and soon they were pressed together, her body moving against his. "Want to step outside for a smoke?" he murmured, his voice thick with desire. "I don't smoke," she replied, but she followed him anyway. The car was barely parked when he pulled her close, their lips meeting with a fervor that mirrored her own desperation. They tumbled into the back seat, limbs entangled. Jordan was passionate, his touch igniting every nerve in her body. It wasn't perfect, but he did better than Chris. He stayed up to 5 minutes, and he was heating hard. It was enough to quell her need for the moment. When it was over, she adjusted her dress and stepped out of the car. "So, what does this mean for us?" he asked hesitantly. "This never happened," she said firmly before walking away. Her phone buzzed as she reached her apartment complex. It was Damien. "Damien, surprise. I'm in town. I wanted to see you before midnight, but I got held up. Are you free?" Her heart raced. She'd resign herself to the idea that they'd never meet again. Yet here he was. Moments later, she saw him standing near her building, holding a small bouquet of flowers. His dark coat and confident smile made him look effortlessly handsome. "I wanted to make this New Year special," he said softly. They went to a nearby cafe, sharing coffee and stories. Time seemed to stand still until he glanced at his watch. "I have some fireworks in my hotel room," he said. "Care to join me for a midnight show?" She hesitated, but his sincerity disarmed her. They walked to his hotel, laughing and talking. Inside his room, the air shifted. One look, and they were in each other's arms. The kiss was slow, deliberate, and filled with unspoken longing. Clothes fell away, and Damien made love to her with a tenderness and passion that left her breathless. He didn't just satisfy her. He made her feel cherished. When they were done, the sound of fireworks burst outside. They showered together quickly and joined the crowds to ring in the new year, her heart brimming with emotion she couldn't yet name. But as the clock struck midnight, one thought lingered in her mind. Where would this lead? Chapter 2. The morning after the first rays of sunlight crept through the hotel room curtains, casting a soft glow on the crumpled sheets where Elena lay. Damien stirred beside her, his breathing steady and calm. For a moment, she allowed herself to revel in the warmth of his presence, the tenderness he'd shown her the night before still fresh in her mind. But as her gaze shifted to the ceiling, reality crept in like an unwelcome guest. The memories of New Year's Eve came rushing back, Chris's failed attempt, Jordan's fleeting passion, and now Damien, who had filled her heart and body with something she hadn't felt in a long time. She sat up quietly, careful not to wake him. Wrapping the hotel's plush robe around her, she padded to the window. The city below was waking up to the promise of a new year, but all she could feel was the weight of uncertainty. "Good morning." Damien's deep voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to see him sitting up, his tousled hair and sleepy smile making her heart skip a beat. "Morning," she replied softly. He stretched, then patted the spot beside him. "Come here." She hesitated but returned to the bed, letting him pull her into his arms. His warmth was comforting, and for a brief moment, she let herself believe that everything could be simple. "Last night was perfect," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It was," she agreed, though the knot in her stomach tightened. They spent the morning together, grabbing breakfast at a cozy cafe before he walked her back to her apartment. When they reached her door, he paused, as if searching for the right words. "Elena, I meant what I said last night. I want to see where this goes," he said earnestly. "No more excuses. No more delays." Her breath caught, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at the screen. It was Jordan. She silenced the call, guilt flooding her. "Everything okay?" Damien asked, noticing her hesitation. "Yeah, just work stuff," she lied, forcing a smile. "Okay, well, I'll let you get settled. But I'll call you later, all right?" She nodded, watching him leave before stepping inside her apartment. The silence was deafening as she leaned against the door. The weeks that followed were a blur of emotions. Damien kept his word, calling her daily and planning visits whenever he could. Their relationship began to feel real, tangible, but the shadow of her New Year's Eve escapades loomed over her. By mid-January, she started feeling off, nausea in the mornings, a strange fatigue she couldn't shake. At first, she chalked it up to stress, but when her period didn't arrive, a sinking feeling settled in her stomach. One rainy afternoon, she bought a pregnancy test and stared at it for what felt like hours before finally taking it. The result was unmistakable. Positive. Elena sank onto the bathroom floor, the test trembling in her hands. Her mind raced through the possibilities. Chris, Jordan, Damien. Who could it be? She stared at her reflection in the mirror, tears streaming down her face as her thoughts spiraled. Could she tell Damien? Would he leave her? Would she even be able to look him in the eye after this? Her gaze dropped to the test, and a new, darker thought crept into her mind. Maybe she didn't have to tell anyone. Maybe she could end this before it even began. The idea of an abortion lingered in her mind for days, a way to erase her mistake and start fresh with Damien. She even researched clinics, imagining a future where she could pretend none of this had ever happened. But every time she tried to convince herself, something deep within her protested. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a life, a piece of her, and possibly of Damien. The thought of ending it filled her with guilt and sorrow. One evening, as she sat in her dimly lit apartment, she placed a hand on her stomach. "I'm scared," she whispered, tears falling freely. "But I think I want to keep you." It wasn't an easy decision, but it felt right. Whatever happened, she would face it. The next day, she made an appointment with her doctor. As she sat in the waiting room, her mind churned with questions. Could she handle this on her own? Should she tell Damien? What about Chris and Jordan? The doctor confirmed the pregnancy, and as she left the clinic, she felt a strange mix of fear and hope. This was her reality now, and she would have to face it. That evening, Damien called again. This time she picked up. "Elena, are you okay?" "You've seemed distant lately," he said, concern evident in his voice. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice trembling. "You don't sound fine." "Talk to me," he urged. She hesitated, her heart pounding. "Damien, there's something I need to tell you. Can we meet?" "Of course. I'll be in your city tomorrow." As she hung up, a sense of dread over her. Tomorrow will change everything one way or another. Elena finds herself pregnant after a series of encounters on New Year's Eve with 3 different men. Her flirtatious neighbor Chris, an old fling Jordan, and Damien, a man she was developing a deep connection with but had yet to meet in person. Overwhelmed by guilt and fear, Elena finally confesses everything to Damien when their relationship begins to deepen. She tearfully explains the events of New Year's Eve, apologizing for what she perceives as betrayal. Damien listens quietly before reassuring her that she didn't cheat on him, as their relationship had not yet begun before that night. He takes responsibility for his part, admitting that his frequent delays in meeting her left room for miscommunication and uncertainty. Damien promises to stand by her regardless of the child's paternity, urging her to keep the matter between them. They proceed with a DNA test, which reveals Damien as the father of the child. Their bond grows stronger as they embrace the chance to build a life together. Eventually, Elena moves to Damien's city, and their love flourishes. The couple is blessed with twins, a boy and a girl, cementing their happiness and future together. Despite the challenges of their unconventional beginning, they create a life filled with love, trust, and mutual understanding. Anytime she remembers her New Year Eve fantasy, it makes her giggling. Happy New Year in advance, everyone. Thank you for all the love and support this year. It's been an incredible journey with you. We've got so much in store for next year, and trust me, it's going to be bigger, better, and packed with even more fun. This is our final post of the year, so let's end it with a bang. See you in the new year. We love you all. Stay tuned, it's going to be epic. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.